Hello everyone, my name is Piyush and welcome back again to AZ900 with Piyush. This is the 10th video in the series, and in this particular video we will be looking into Azure Functions. So we will see the concept, and then we will do a demo creating the Azure function, and in the end we will do a knowledge check for AZ900 certification exam. So make sure to watch the video till the end, and let's start the video. Let's quickly see what exactly is Azure Function. Azure Function is an event driven serverless compute service. Now, let's have a look at each of these one by one. So, event driven means it is executed based on certain events, such as you want your function to be executed as soon as there is a file uploaded to the Azure Blob storage. That is why it is called event driven. There are different type of events that it supports. So it could be a HTTP based event, or it could be a time based event like execute this function at the certain time at a certain day, such as like a cron syntax. Or it could be, message from other service like Azure Event Grid or Azure or queue storage and so on. Serverless means like for your virtual machines and your containers, these are also the compute service. So to run these type of services, you need to have an underlying VM. That VM has to be running in order to execute your code, in order to make your website or your application accessible to the user. But as your Azure function is serverless, that means you don't need to manage an underlying virtual machine or underlying infrastructure to run your Azure functions. So, for example, let's say you have a user and this user uploaded a file to Azure Blob storage. Don't worry about this. We will have a look into the Azure Blob storage and all the storages later in this video series. But for now, just consider this blob storage is an Azure storage to store binary large objects such as images, files, log files, text files, all those things. So it is similar to AWS S3. If you have worked with AWS before, let's say the user uploads a file to this, and you want as soon as there is a file uploaded to this Azure Blob storage, there is an email that is triggered after this particular event. So this file upload is a event. As we have seen that Azure function is event driven, so this is kind of a trigger to this Azure function, and Azure function will be watching this Azure Blob all the time, right? And as soon as it finds that event, as soon as it finds that trigger, it executes that Azure function and triggers the email. So that is how Azure function works. Now I have also created another video, like an in-depth video about Azure function. If you want to look into it, feel free to check that out, and I will put the link in the description section as well as up somewhere in the title bar. So have a look at that. And Azure function has a lot of benefits over Azure virtual machines or containers. First is it is cost effective, as you don't have to manage the infrastructure, plus the virtual machine is not running all the time, and it saves all the cost. You only pay for the number of code executions. So in Azure function, you write your piece of code and you get charged based on the number of times the code get executed. It also provides faster response than Azure virtual machines or containers, but it is used only in cases where your application shouldn't be running all the time and it is event driven, right? You want your function to be executed based on certain events or based on certain time of the day, like a cron job, but the execution is really fast. And it is also highly scalable. That means it can support a large number of requests from the upstream system. And it is really flexible, like you can do a lot of things with it, because you can choose your own programming language and you can write code as per your requirement. Right? So this is how it works. And let's jump into the demo and see how we can create an Azure function. All right, so I'm in my Azure portal, portal.azure.com, and you can click over here, create a new resource, or from here, as I can see my recently used services from here, or you can search from the search bar. Right, so let's do that and click create. Now, like any other Azure service, it will ask you certain details such as your subscription, your resource group. Let me create a new resource group for this demo. Easy 900. Piyush. And I'll hit OK. Now we have to provide this function app a unique name because it will be accessible to this particular DNS. Right? So let's give it a name. Easy 900 function, and it is not available. So let's call it -101, and it says it is available. So we are good. Now there are two options to publish the Azure function. We can write our own code, or we can also upload a Docker container. So for this demo, let's choose the default option with the code and then select a runtime stack. There are different options available for us. So let me just choose Python for this. And there is Python version that we can select, like 3.7 to 3.10. So let me select the default version, which is also the latest Python version. Then the region, let me just keep it default. Operating system, Linux. And then you select the plan type as serverless. So there are different other options, premium, app service plan, and serverless. So this is what we need because we want to create an Azure serverless function so that we don't have to worry about managing the infrastructure. Right? Click hosting. If you want to view your logs generated by Azure function, then you create a storage account which will store all the logs for you. Like I'll just let it create a new storage account for this and then hit networking. Then the same thing, it will ask me if I need this function to be publicly accessible or no. And like rest of the default options. And I'll hit review and create. It will do the validations. And once it is validated, I can hit create to create the Azure Function app. All right, it says your deployment is completed. Let's go to the resource. And it says the status is running. Okay, and it has created an app service plan for you. App service plan, we will look into the details when we do the web app session of this course. But for now, this is not really important. And you click over here to Azure Functions. And now we will create a new Azure function by clicking over create. Okay. So first, there are different options for development environment, VS Code, any editor plus code tool, or develop in portal. So I'll just keep it default, which is develop in portal. Then there are different templates. So if you remember, I have told you there are different triggers that we can use as part of Azure function. First trigger is HTTP trigger or a time-based trigger, or there could be trigger from other Azure services such as Azure Queue, Service Bus Topic trigger, and so on. Right. So for this demo, let me just choose this one, HTTP trigger, and hit create. Now it was really fast. It took like some microseconds and it created the function for me. Now go over here to core and test. Let me just minimize these logs. So here is the default Azure function that was generated for you. It is like a default template because we have used that HTTP trigger as the template. So this was generated with that. And this is the init.py file, and there is function.json file which has other trigger based parameters, right? So if you want to visualize this function, you click over here to integration section. So it will have a trigger, which is an HTTP trigger. You can add some inputs and outputs. So for this particular demo, we have kept the default output, which is an HTTP return. It will return the standard output. You can also configure some third-party service if you want this function to send some request to any other function such as email or an SMS or anything else. Right? The same way you can configure your inputs as well. So let me go back to code and test and just try to execute this function. Right, so there is this option over here which says test and run. I'll click on that. Different options like the type of method and key. Let's keep it default. And this is the input and the response will be over here. Okay, so over here I'll add a new parameter to be passed in the request. The parameter name is name and value is like Piyush, and then I hit run. Once I do that, it send HTTP response code as 200. That means the call is successful and it triggered hello name. The HTTP function executed successfully. So this was the test function that was executed as per the request. And if you see the bottom of the screen, here are the logs like executing this function programmatically via the host APIs, and it sent the invocation, posting invocation ID, and it processed the request. As simple as that. If you see over here, it says it took only 48 milliseconds to process the request to execute the function. Yes, it was a really simple function, but even then it was really fast. And if there is an application, if there is an event based trigger, it will be faster as compared to other compute services. Now, if you are following me along with this video and you are testing this in your Azure portal, don't forget to delete the resources after the demo is done. So I'll go back to the resource group. The simplest way is to just delete the entire resource group and all the resources within it will be deleted. So I'll just go to my resource group, and the resource group name was AZ900 with Piyush. And inside that, I'll hit delete resource group option. Then enter the name of the resource group. I can just copy it from here and paste it, hit delete, and that's it. So this is what you have to do to delete all the resources that we have just provisioned as part of this demo. Okay, let's go back to the last part of this video, which is knowledge checks. As always, feel free to take the screenshot of this page and try to attempt all the questions. Let me know in the comment section if you face any difficulty in answering any of these questions. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. I hope this session was also helpful to you in understanding Azure Function and its related concepts. So if you did, let me know in the comment section, give it a thumbs up and share it among your friends, family and colleagues so that they can also take the advantage of this learning opportunity. And I will see you soon in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.